Raymond gave us an understanding of the OSI model, and find it here. It's on the left, is it not? We see the 7 layers that we've been discussing. That's the OSI model. But then we go and we look at that other thing. It's kind of the same thing, but then it's kind of different, isn't it, also? It's the TCP/IP stack. The TCP/IP stack has a few other names. Raymond, give me another name for the TCP/IP stack or TCP/IP suite.
That would be the DoD model.
So you might in fact have heard of it by a different name. But regardless of how you name it, this is truly what happens in network communication. The OSI reference model is just that. It's a reference model. And it is our best way of compartmentalizing all of the different functions that could occur in networking. And it does fall short in certain arenas. MPLS, for instance, has a layer 2.5. 2.5 because there's no discrete layer that is focused on what MPLS deals with as defined by the OSI model. But if networking really operates the way that the TCP/IP stack describes things, then why don't we just throw away the OSI model? Here's the reality. The TCP/IP suite or stack, that model that we see there, does not describe network access. You remember when Raymond was talking about bits and MAC addresses? Things that happen at the physical layer and the data link layer are not defined by the TCP/IP stack. They say just give me some network to run on top of. That's all they do. Just give me a network to run on top of. Give me network access. And that's what it says there, network access. So it doesn't really describe that bottommost layer, but it's assumed that we have it. Otherwise, you can't put the TCP/IP stack on top of it. Now, Raymond, when I talk about IP addresses, in the OSI model, where do IP addresses live?
They live at the network layer.
I don't even see a network layer on the TCP/IP stack, but let's break up the name. Raymond, when I say IP address, what does the IP stand for?
Internet Protocol.
Ooh. So Raymond, where would an IP address live in terms of the TCP/IP stack? I know that it lives at the network layer of the OSI model, but where does it live for the TCP/IP stack?
It would live at the most appropriately named layer, the internet layer.
Now we have a one-to-one on the transport layer. And we've mentioned 2 transport layer protocols. Do you remember those transport layer protocols that Raymond mentioned to you? Raymond, what were those 2 different transport layer protocols?
We mentioned TCP and we mentioned UDP.
So that's a big choice here. And then, wait a minute. Raymond, I thought we were getting away from monolithic protocols where one thing tries to do too much. But here I can start to see that height going a little out of control. So what they're saying here is they don't really truly compartmentalize application layer functions into presentation and session. Those functions do take place, but they all live in harmony or in chaos, depending on how you look at it, at the application layer of the TCP/IP stack. Raymond, I expect people to have a challenge here, though. Now we have 2 different models, right? Still, what does it mean when I say layer 2? If I just say layer 2, which model am I talking about?
When I hear layer 2, I'm thinking of the OSI model, the data link layer.
So still, numbers apply to the OSI model and not the TCP/IP stack. Later in this course, Raymond, we'll talk about some specific protocols, and it is important that our folks understand where those protocols live. So we already have a few, don't we? Let's make sure we understand where they live. Folks, do you remember where Internet Protocol lives now? We kind of gave it away, didn't we? IP would live at the network layer of the OSI model or the internet layer of the TCP/IP stack. TCP and UDP living at the transport layer. Now, Raymond, give me a few application layer protocols.
Well, we have FTP, TFTP, we have SMTP, we have HTTP, HTTPS, Telnet SSH.
So those are true applications that live and are used. And we can now see, okay, yeah, we have different places where these protocols exist. Going back to how Raymond began this discussion. How did Raymond begin this discussion? He was talking about the fact that we can target specific layers of functionality and build to that. So we've seen devices that might live at the data link layer like switches, routers living at the network layer, protocols that might live at the transport layer or the application layer. We're starting to see that in earnest.